Hello, folks. My name is DC Rockwell, and this is Fault Tolerance Code and Chaos. I'm here with my co-host, Elio, and today we are going to start off this new show by having a conversation about whatever we want for as long as we want. So, Elio, why don't we give a little bit of background as to why we wanted to create this show?
Okay, thank you. We've done a whole bunch of other stuff, and in the past we've kind of been very freeform, and we had on Automate All the Things some ridiculously long shows that, looking back, I don't know what happened. I don't know how people kept watching. Literally 7-hour shows, like almost a full workday, and I don't know why people kept listening. But I'm really kind of humbled by it. That's kind of insane. I can't think about anything that I've enjoyed watching for 7 hours straight. So the other stuff we've done, we've tried to bring a little more structure in and bring it a little more back to, like a real amount of time that normal people, because I know what these days in this age of ADD, when I'm scrolling through and I see something as 5 minutes, sure, why not? I'll watch that. And I see 15, I'm like, okay, it looks like it might be good. I'll give 15 minutes. An hour is a big ask. So we're trying to kind of bring some structure to the rest. But we also want a place to just play and just not have to worry about it and not have to spend a ton of time on pre-production and putting together a script of like, here's all the points we definitely want to cover so we don't run over time and all that. We just want to play and have a good time. And we'll see. Maybe people will stay watching the whole time. Maybe they won't. That said, I don't think we're going 7 hours. What do you think, DC?
No, I don't think so. I don't have 7 hours contiguous in my life anymore that are free. So we're just going to be limited by that. Today, we are going to be highly limited because I have somewhere to go in about 45 minutes. But we did want to get out some content today. We are trying to record every Monday and Wednesday, starting at 12 p.m. and going till 1. So we're going to try and work that in there, and actually, I'm not sure if we agreed to the 12 and 1, but we're definitely going to have a recording going on Monday and Wednesday, and that's going to be released the following day on Tuesdays and on Thursdays, and that coincides with the normal show recording, which is going to happen on Saturday. So essentially, it's going to work where we're going to have some content coming out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so hopefully it'll be good, and then you'll see at least the recordings going on Saturday. So yeah, it sounds like a lot of work, but we've done some prep so we can make sure that this isn't too much for us. We're not going to, drop out of this. It's actually only about, what is it? It's we tallied it up. It's about a 5.5 hour commitment a week. So not too bad.
Not too bad. And I'll throw one more thing while we're talking show notes. So our last show, which went pretty well, one thing that's on me, I don't know if anyone caught that. There is one thing I said in the show, see if anyone can find it, that is wrong. The terminology I used is flipped. And I called one thing A, and A should have been B, and B should have been A. I'm not going to name it right now, but unfortunately, I usually try to do a lot of research before a show, and I kind of went with like the mnemonic in my mind, like, oh, it should be this. It's actually the opposite. It's different words than I had in the mnemonic. So let's see if anyone can actually find that and point out in episode 1 what I got wrong. I almost want to do a segment of what did I screw up? And because, we try really hard to put out accurate information and do a ton of background research. Nothing's ever 100%. So that show and any others, let's see if you could find out when I get stuff wrong.
Is there going to be a prize? I mean,
we might have to think of something, but yeah, we might something like a Nuth check or something, because that was the famous thing with Donald Knuck's book. If you could point out something he got wrong, you get a $2.50 check, or excuse me, 2.56-cent check. So I don't think anyone ever cashed any of the Nuth checks, but he wrote a fair number of those, and that's kind of a part of a badge of honor, like, oh, I corrected Donald Knuth. So I'm not nearly as sharp as him, but we'll have to see if we could throw something half decent together.
Yeah, definitely. We have folks in our chat now. Alice Schmid, wow, you subscribed at Tier 1. That is super awesome. You were definitely the first subscriber of the new show, of all the new shows. So that is amazing. Thank you so much. And definitely interact with us in the chat on these shows. Tech Topic, we're going to be mostly trying to stay on the topic that we're talking about, but these shows are for interacting with the audience, and we would love to hear your your comments. If you are interested in knowing what happened to us for the past 3 years, the first Tech Topic is all about that. So go check that out. That got released on all the major podcasting apps yesterday, actually. So pretty cool. We have a podcast published. Pretty nice, huh?
Yeah, we're getting back to it. And yeah, there's some other really good tips about things that some of the things we covered are in other how-to podcast videos, but there's a few little edges that aren't. I've never seen that mentioned. So some good stuff in there.
Nice. And one error.
And one error. Yeah, that
just
was on
one. Yeah, the rest of it's perfect.
You pretty
Absolutely
nailed it. Pretty much
perfect.
nailed your part of it, DC. I just screwed up episode 1. So
well, I'm gonna have to admit that we were setting up for a long time trying to get ready for that first episode, and I didn't get very good sleep, and I was very tired. And as I'm listening to that first episode, all I hear is I was just using fillers the whole time. My brain just was not working properly. So anyway, I hear you have something on your mind. You keep on trying to talk to me about it, and I keep on saying, dude, for every minute that you and I are talking about something interesting, we are letting this content go straight into dev null. So
yeah,
what was it? You said there was some sort of an exploit or a hack or something that just happened.
Yes. So this is pretty big news. This is one of those. There have been a few like major incidents in cybersecurity where I hate to use the term game changer, but like really it's like, oh wow, like everything's different now. And this is maybe not as impactful as like Stuxnet. Stuxnet was really like, oh wow, cyber warfare is a real thing, and air gapping doesn't always keep you safe. But the other big ones that I'm not going to do a whole history because we have less than an hour, but Target was it was the highest profile supply chain attack that I think really caught the general public's attention, where it's like, oh wow, like it's not just our stuff that needs to be secure, but if we're connecting to like an HVAC vendor in Target's case and they get hacked and they have access to our systems, like all of our stuff could get hacked through our vendors. So the supply chain is really important. So this is kind of one of those. And then we saw, I believe it was Symantec. Let's see if that goes in the next Find Where I'm Wrong segment. But there was a flaw discovered in the unpacker. So if you were running Symantec antivirus and there was a sketchy little file, then it would go ahead and it would try to do a few things to make sure it wasn't super dangerous. And then it would try to unpack the file, like, decompress the zip or whatever, and kind of do it in a sandboxed way and see kind of like a controlled detonation. Like the bomb squad might mess with the device inside like a big shielded container. If it blows up, it contains the blast, make sure no one gets hurt. Except that's not how it went down. The unpacker had a flaw that actually, if the attacker was a nation state level, someone who really knew what they were doing, then if they knew you were using that, they could use that flaw to escape from the little sandbox and actually take over the whole machine as root ring 0. So they have complete control over anything and everything, can do whatever they want at that point. So it was crazy because everyone up until that point, always run antivirus. Make sure you have antivirus. Antivirus was everywhere. And literally overnight, after everyone learned of the unpacker flaw, it's like, turn off your antivirus. Like, do not run antivirus. Like, if you are a large org and you are targeted, then antivirus will make you less secure. It will increase your attack surface, and that's how you'll lose everything. So this we'll get to in a second. This is that kind of a shift that we're seeing with this attack.
So what kind of option does this affect consumers? Like, if anybody's listening to this, are they going to need to turn off their antivirus, or what about like Windows Defender? What about are there any antiviruses out there that are trustworthy?
Well, that one was old, so that's the old attack. So hopefully, I haven't heard of any recent things. Not that I follow security, but not super closely. But antivirus in a corporate setting I think it's still probably a decent idea to run antivirus for a home user, because it'll catch certain things, and you're unlikely, unless you're a VIP, to be targeted at the level that corporate tar- there's a lot of money. It's kind of like you don't go rob every individual house and see what's under the mattress. That's really risky. It's not worth your time. You're not going to get that much. You go rob the bank because all the money's in the bank. So corporate targets, if you're a business of any size, especially medium to large, you got a target on your back, and they're going to go after you. It's worth their while to try to go after these businesses.
Boy,
So
I can also
yeah.
imagine if you were going door to door checking under everybody's mattresses, you'd get some bycatch from that.
Yeah. Yeah. But to address your question, does it affect like the home user? So kind of a yes and a no. Yes, you're definitely going to be affected by this. Is there anything you as just an individual can do about this? Not really, not this attack. So the name, yeah.
Yeah, let's go into that attack. What's this new attack?
So the name, I really think they missed the opportunity. The company is SolarWinds, and they make a product called Orion. And Orion is a comprehensive product to do monitoring and manage software patches and software updates, all that kind of stuff. It's a really comprehensive security solution. It's pretty popular. I think the number I've seen tossed around, at first people said, well, maybe a few thousand, but it seems like there's probably at least 18,000 companies that are using SolarWinds.
Companies.
And government entities as well.
Oh.
So what happened was, and I don't have all the details, we're not going to cover that. We're going to try to cover the things here. We're going to try to give enough context so you understand why this is important, and then cover the things other people aren't talking about. Because in my LinkedIn feed, which is really rich with security professionals, there's like at least half dozen to a dozen people who've already covered all the basics and a little extra and made some really good points. I don't want to just add to the noise. I want to say, what aren't they talking about? What else can we add in, and how can we further the conversation? So it's some of the people involved. And when I say people in this case, I mean corporate entities that started off like, why is this so bad? The U.S. Treasury, Department of Homeland Security. Like there are some really, this is bad. Like this is striking at the core of, and again, there's 18,000 other potential entities. And so when you talk about what's your personal impact, well, if the Treasury and I haven't heard if the IRS is involved, we'll see, maybe not. That's still nothing yet. But that obviously affects everyone in the country. Everyone's got to pay taxes. Homeland Security protects everyone in the country. Treasury obviously handles printing new money and the monetary supply. So that affects us all. So yeah, you're going to feel the impact, but it's really up to the security teams at these companies to figure out how to mitigate this and figure out what to do. And that's where it gets interesting.
Well, I mean, the good news is that our government is really good at figuring out what to do after a breach, right? They're really good at that.
We have some people that are. Yeah,
I'm joking. But
there's some that aren't. But no, we do actually have some really good people. That was one of the discussions in LinkedIn. We do. I know a few of them, only a few, but there are actually really good people. But yeah, the sarcasm lands in a few places well.
You're right. It was some
everywhere.
Blanket shade there, but do we know what was compromised? Like, was it just some email servers, or was it like copy machines, and now people are just copying out things of their butts in government offices, or what's going on?
It looks like, and again, there's still a lot of detail coming in as they analyze this, but it looks like what happened is there may have been a lack of security in some of the basically software update channels for Orion. And so a compromised version was pushed out to everyone via software update. And I'm not entirely clear. I've seen a few things back and forth. So this is still early. This only dropped on Monday. So we're basically like 2.5 days into this attack. So there's a lot that needs to happen. In a few weeks, we'll have a much more complete idea of what happened, who's affected, what else is going on. But that's the issue, is basically instead of accidentally clicking on the link to install malware, they compromised and co-opted the update system to just sprinkle malware throughout the corporate and government world, which is terrifying.
So what is Orion?
So, well, like I said, that's a monitoring platform. It does, I'm trying to remember the whole list, but it does monitoring of different system parameters. So literally keeping an eye on the entire network. What's going on? What are all the machines? What are they doing? Keeping an eye on, are they patched? Are they up to date? Which is actually really terrifying when you think about it, because one of the things that people try to do in an attack is they try to look at what version is this, because you can just go cross-reference. There are tools for people defending that you can run on a machine that'll get an inventory of all the software and then say, oh, based on all the stuff you have and all the versions, you have these vulnerabilities. Like, here's the CVE database, the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposure Database, and they cross-reference the versions with the already disclosed visibilities. And so you can actually, if you're trying to protect the machine, you're like, oh man, I need to go update those 10 pieces of software like now. If you're trying to attack, then you can use similar techniques to be like, oh, cool, I have like 50 different ways in, because that one has 5 flaws and this piece of software has 2 bugs and that one has 10. And here's my menu of ways to attack this system.
So then these companies, all these different companies and the government agencies right now have to basically, what, patch this or turn it off? Or
so that's where it gets real interesting. As right now, the guidance that came out within hours, like almost immediately from CISA, and I'm blanking on the acronym right now, but CISA is a kind of I'm not sure what to call it, a sub-department or what, but it's under Homeland Security. It was created relatively recently, and the goal is to specifically deal with cybersecurity aspects, I think primarily on computer systems, IoT and such. And so their whole thing is specifically like, basically there was too much going on and the existing systems are already kind of overloaded. So they like, we really need to focus on this. And they created CISA to really keep an eye on what's going on and manage those issues. So that's the guidance that came out. And they said for any government entity, like, you need to turn this off, like pull the plug on those servers running Orion, like now. And then here's some other steps. Once you've done that, then here are the next steps that you need to do to start mitigating and cleaning up after this and find out what else may have been compromised, because that's lateral movement is a big thing. And that's what makes this so scary. You don't just attack the one machine, you attack the one machine that gets you behind the firewall. And then you start seeing what other machines you can get onto to maintain persistence. So you can bounce around and, and really capture the entire network and stay in there. Because if you just attack the one machine, then you get discovered and they clean up the machine, then you got nothing to work with. So you want to try to attack as many other machines that you can reach from the first one to maintain that persistence in the network.
So then what are they doing in the meantime? If they're turning off their system monitoring, are they just leaving everything vulnerable? Is everything just open right now? Or is it like they're using some backup systems or switching to other services?
The good news is, again, this was monitoring. So it's terrifying because that's the machine that's going to basically know what else is there. But it's not the firewall. It's not the data loss prevention system. It's not, any kind of antivirus, et cetera. It's more of a monitoring versus an active defense thing. So if you turn off the Orion box, all the other stuff that's defensive should still be working unless it's also been compromised. So you're not defenseless. You're just blindfolded. So it's kind of like the Kung Fu movies where, you see maybe there's a blind grandmaster and someone kills the lights and then they have to fight. One guy can't see and the other guy's like, that's great. Like, I love it when you can't see because I fight all the time when I can't see. And that's where the hackers are, is their biggest thing is, and I just realized I used the term hacker. I hate when media does that, and I just accidentally fell into that because 20, 30 years of hearing the media say hacker. Really, it's attacker. We used to use the term cracker as someone who cracks a system. That's doesn't really work out, and everyone's moved away from that. But today, the fancy term to sound official is threat actor. Although if they were only acting, it would be great. They're much more capable.
Yeah, threat actor would have been in like Angelina Jolie from the movie Hackers, right?
Yeah. So because hacking was basically just literally hacking together a quick solution, trying to get systems to do something they weren't designed to do. So hacking has and still is within the hacking community, the security community, the maker community, and general programming. It's a very positive thing in some contexts. You don't want hackers building your production code, but there's always, you'll have some issue and someone will come up with a brilliant hack to keep things running or get stuff running again. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all. So these threat actors, you know, that's the problem, is they want to move undetected. And the initial reports of this breach were that whoever pulled this off, because SolarWinds is a security company, you'd think they're going to be watching better than anyone else their infrastructure and really keeping an eye to make sure that they don't get attacked. They're really high profile. Everyone knows if you're making security software, that's like best case scenario for a threat actor is to be able to compromise your stuff, because now you're behind the defenses. Like it's almost like having a corrupt cop or a corrupt gate guard in the Middle Ages. Like if you can attack that, it gives you a lot more ability than just sneaking in. You can let other threat actors in. You can let your friends in. You can really start laying some groundwork to really undermine what's going on. So whoever did this, it wasn't just some kid poking around and like, oh, I'm kind of curious, what does this do? Or some white hat researcher. Clearly, this is someone who knows what they're doing. This is someone who probably has larger goals. This may be nation state, very likely. It may not be. It might be someone really skilled, but it really looking like it's probably nation state level stuff, if not directly by a nation state. That'll be interesting to see in a few months if we're able to figure out who it was. So, go ahead.
Well, doesn't it seem unlikely that it would be an individual, because like with this wide scale of compromise, how would they know what to do with all of it? You know, you would need a large team to sort of go through everything, look for all the opportunities. I mean, unless they're looking for a needle in a haystack or something like that, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about computers is you can automate stuff. And so this is the thing where we talk about security. And this is where a lot of I read an article quite a few, 3-4 years ago. They were talking about the Cold War and mutually assured destruction. And should we have mutually assured destruction? Should we do hackbacks? If a country hacks us, should we immediately try to hack them back and be like, well, you can't hack us. If you hack us and destroy our infrastructure, we'll do the same to you. So you're not going to do it. That doesn't really work, though, because first of all, so far, and this may change, but so far, like permanent physical damage, like a nuclear strike wipes out a city in an extremely noticeable way, and it leaves a whole bunch of radiation behind where that city is just done. No one's going to be able to move in there. Look at Fukushima, look at Chernobyl, which, were accidents, not attacks. But only a few people can go to some areas, and they have to wear a radiation monitor and keep a real close eye on what the exposure is. They're stuck. You have a whole exclusion zone where you can't go into and survive. So computer stuff right now is not at that level. There's not like, oh, this will make the whole city uninhabitable. This will, the entire international community. If there was actually a nuclear strike right now, if any country, including us, actually used nuclear weapons in another country, there'd be the direct fallout and whether they struck back. But there'd also be the international community, I would assume, widespread condemnation saying, that's not okay. We have these nuclear weapons, but we all kind of just have them. No one's meaning to use these against anyone else. And there'd probably be tons of sanctions. It would be really hard to kind of get away with that and not suffer some consequences. Whereas the hacking is computer stuff.
I'm skeptical, like
should be.
The end of World War II seems to say that whatever country drops the bomb's going to be just fine. And then the Tsar Bomba, which punched a hole in our atmosphere, it seems like, we didn't really do too much to them based upon just to Russia based upon just that, So yeah. I don't know. I think, COVID happened and the world didn't really, impose sanctions on many of the countries that, like we deserve some sanctions, it almost seems, because we've allowed it to spread so badly. But so I don't know. I'm skeptical. I can't say I know for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, what? I hope this never happens. But if the first bomb in modern history is dropped, we'll have to see.
Yeah, no, you're right to be skeptical. Again, that was the common wisdom, but it may not hold anywhere anymore, and it definitely doesn't hold in computing. This idea that anyone's going to sanction it. There's hacking all the time. It's the ambient background noise right now is constant attacks, and so it doesn't work. And the other reason is it's really easy. As we were talking about, it scales well. One person can start attacking compromised machines, or sorry, not compromised. They could be uncompromised too. In fact, it might actually, in some cases, be harder to attack a machine that's already been compromised. This is starting. It's been going on for a while. I forget the date. This was a security discussion of, is it at a point yet where someone who's trying to build a botnet and take over machines will actually essentially run antivirus and block other botnets? And that's been happening from at least 2015 to 2014. Somewhere in there was the first case I could find reported where, yeah, like once you get infected by one thing, they might not always, you can have multiple infections on a machine, but they might actually defend you from other stuff because each botnet operator is trying to grow the largest botnet and maintain control. And so there's a lot of competition there.
We have a question in our chat from Alschmid. He says, is this primarily affecting the U.S. or does this company have clients worldwide?
I do not have the answer to that. I believe that SolarWinds is primarily U.S. I am not sure if they have overseas clients or any allies or anything are using their software. So not sure, but I think it's mostly the U.S. I don't know if it's just the U.S.
So worth a look up. And then yesterday you were saying something that caught my ear that I thought was really, really interesting. So these monitoring systems are essentially trying to protect the network. Mm-hmm. And when you're infecting the thing that's protecting the network, you're saying it acts a lot like an autoimmune disease. And I guess I'm not sure if that's the exact right terminology, but I think that that's really interesting. And is this a new trend? Is this something new where people are going after compromising the very tools that are trying to keep them out?
Yeah, I think this is an evolution, an important step in that. Like we talked about, there was Target, that was a supply chain attack. There was the antivirus unpacker, which was going after protective tools. And this is kind of a combination of both of those, where it's not antivirus, it's not a firewall, but it is a key part of a lot of companies defensively. It's part of their strategy, and hopefully they all have good defense in depth, where the idea is just like an old-timey castle in the Middle Ages. You'd have an outer wall that was relatively short, kind of just keep people out, kind of just say, here's the edge of our kingdom. And then you'd go in a ways, there'd be all the fields there. And then you'd have an inner wall that was a lot bigger, but still not that hard to get over or breach. And then you'd have the castle walls. And then you'd have, you have the moats, castle walls. You'd have the keep, which would have several different gates and things. And you just keep having these layers. So as attackers came at you, you'd have these different things to slow them down. And sure, they'd get past the initial wall pretty quickly, but it hopefully gets you just enough time to, run to the next one and keep retreating back and get a better defensive position. So that's a key security principle, is defense in depth. Don't rely on one thing to keep you safe. Have a number of different fail safes. So when something fails, then hopefully you're like, oh shoot, well, we have like 7 layers, 14 layers of protection, whatnot. So shoot, we lost 1, but we still have 6. We still have, 13 left. So we still have time, and we bought ourselves enough time to deal with this threat. So hopefully all of these companies and government agencies have good defense in depth. And that wasn't the only thing. Hopefully they have some kind of other second. Maybe they have Splunk installed. Maybe they have a elk stack system or some other monitoring system where they're not completely blind now, and they can look at other logs from firewalls and whatnot. So we'll see. We're getting put to the test right now. Do we have good defense in depth? Have people been paying attention and setting up their systems as they should?
As I'm thinking about it, and I'm wondering whether or not autoimmune is really the best analogy, because it almost seems like this, in a medical analogy, this would be somebody who's sort of attacking the machines, which are monitoring your health, or it could be maybe analogous to intentional contamination, malicious contamination of medicine, for example, like that person who went around and contaminated the Tylenol bottles, something like that. So I wonder if this is just like a new type of an attack, and I have some questions as to, is this just really creative and nobody really thought of, this could happen, or what? How do we? if this is a new type of attack, how many other new types of attacks are there out there? And I know we don't know what we don't know, but is there any sort of process or a new discipline, for example, that could possibly dedicate itself to just trying to look for attack vectors within the other, companies that are trying to protect us?
Yeah, so that's two interesting issues that you bring up there. So one, yes, we've seen ransomware going after hospitals, and there actually have been some deaths at hospitals. I think was it NHS in Britain. They actually had some people die because they got devices. Like if you have an infusion pump that's supposed to be slowly administering some kind of chemical, whether it's a drug or usually not just saline, but whatever it's administering to keep someone alive at a very specific flow rate, and it gets ransomware and you can't control it, good luck with that. Like it's really hard to keep that person alive. And it's hard to swap out an infusion pump with someone doing that by hand. The whole point is it very slowly drips in very precisely the treatment medication or whatnot. So we've seen that before. As far as types of attacks, really, I would say there's a whole lot of unexplored territory. There's a brand new one, another piece of security news. I forget the name right now. It's a play on Wi-Fi. It's not that creative a name, but the attack is fascinating. Researchers I can't remember, it was Monday or Tuesday this week, they released a thing about turning RAM, the clock speeds on today's RAM, on their DDR RAM, really up there. And there's some overlap with Wi-Fi. So you can modulate, and I haven't had a chance to read the paper, but basically you can modulate some signals in the RAM, and you can turn a chip, a DIMM, into an antenna. And it's not nearly as good an antenna as like a Wi-Fi card, but if you have an air-gapped machine, so it's not connected to the internet for security, and you want to get data off of it because it's got sensitive data, and there's a router or a phone or some device within about 6 to 9 feet of that, that computer, you can go ahead and actually send signals that can be picked up by the Wi-Fi device and basically create a Wi-Fi connection from the RAM in the computer. So even if it has no Wi-Fi card, if the antenna is disconnected, whatever, and it shouldn't be able to get onto a Wi-Fi network, you can still push data out on a Wi-Fi network from an air-gapped machine. So yeah, incredible creativity and side channels.
So, as you're saying that, it made me realize, we already do have an industry that does try to find all these little vulnerabilities. They're the hackers. It's DEF CON. It's these folks who are trying to do this. And they have been trying to be legitimized for the longest time. And people are really just prosecuting them and pushing them to the side when they find these kinds of things because they don't want their shareholders and they don't want their customers to know that they found them. And yet they are the folks who are doing the most in-depth cutting-edge research trying to protect us against the tools that we think are protecting us.
Oh, yeah. No, you're totally right on that. There's this battle between those even just curious kids in some cases who are just trying, well, I wonder if this will work. Let's see what happens if I do this. It goes all the way back to some of the original, before hacking, before there was really a computer network, there was phreaking with a PH. And it was kind of, there's all these little tones. I don't know. I was amazed to learn this when I was younger. But the little sounds, well, these days you don't hear them as much. Some cell phones still play the sounds. But when you dial a number, you hear those tones. They're actual dual tone. And they do that so you can't accidentally make the wrong frequency with your voice. DTMF, dual tone.
DTMF, right.
Multi-frequency or messaging format. Anyway, got to look that one up too. But it's in-band signaling. And because the phone was primarily something to carry voice and not other types of audio, human voices, unless you're talking about like Mongolian throat singers, it's one frequency. And where birds can make multiple frequencies, which is why bird songs can be more elaborate than our voices, we can only make one frequency at a time. So if you have two frequencies at the same time, the chances of a human making that, especially by accident, are basically zero. And since you don't have a signaling channel that you can be like, hey, here's who I need to connect to, and then put the data through another channel, you have to do what's called in-band sequencing, or signaling, in-band signaling. And that they had that one Captain Crunch whistle that was famous. That was one of the tones, and you could actually create some of these tones, and you could end up basically finding, if you just poked around long enough, you could find all the codes that the phone companies had built in, and you could get free calls. You could put the phone into basically a diagnostic mode and call anywhere in the world you wanted to, and the bill would go to the phone company, not you. They wouldn't even know who was using the phone. And so there were a lot of hackers like Grifter and just a whole slew of people early on. I think Wozniak was also into freaking a little bit. And yeah, that's where it started. And then when computers started coming on the scene, that same mentality of like, well, what can we do with all these things? Not just what we're being told we can do, but really, what could we do if we're willing to try anything? And there's that battle between the people trying to figure out and trying to tell everyone, hey, look, I found this crazy new thing we could do. That's really cool, right? And a lot of it was just purely curiosity. It wasn't like, hey, how can I attack a machine? At first, it was just like, I found out how to do a crazy new thing. And then you had businesses now where they don't want that crazy new thing happening. They don't want to spend more money and have to like throw another few million at security. And they don't want their brand tarnished and possibly have lawsuits these days as, regulation is starting to catch up when they have a breach. So when someone breaks in, instead of being like, oh, wow, I'm really glad you found the door was unlocked and you told us the door was unlocked and now we're going to lock that door. They're like, shh, don't let anyone know. We don't want our stock to take a hit. Like, and well, it's not just, it's like, we will prosecute you and we will send you to prison if you tell anyone that you found out that we weren't doing what we should have been doing.
Well, there's another reason why, and this came up in the news today, and I'm going to bring this up on our fancy smancy. Nice. If you're watching on the video, I'm going to bring this up on our little TV here. But I don't know if you can see this. Let me see if I can
bring that. Let's try all of it out. Make it bigger.
Make it bigger.
There you go.
But insiders Silver Lake, Thoma Bravo traded $286 million of SolarWinds stock 6 days before the security breach made news. So, it's kind of also like, well, we don't want you telling anybody that we've had a breach before we've had chance to tell our major stockholders to pull their money. Otherwise, they're not going to give us more in the future. Ooh.
Or even if they don't give you more, if you can sell while the company's still riding all the hype in the company, and this applies not just to SolarWinds, but we've seen multiple instances of insider trading where, just right before a disaster hits and everyone knows about it, it's amazing. It's like, oh, wow, that person sold all of their stock. Interesting.
Well, I guess the truth is it could have just been coincidence, and we'll find out through the investigation. But it's stuff like this where we know in the past that there were several, many instances, uncountable instances where people did actually perform insider trading based upon these kinds of breaches. That this is suspect, and certainly it's going to be investigated.
Yeah. There's a reason there's laws for that. The financial laws aren't arbitrary. Basically, every time someone figured out how to do some shenanigans, it's like, oh, well, I guess we better make a law for that. So they stopped doing that. And that's where Bitcoin, which, we'll have a whole another show. I really want to tear Bitcoin apart. But Bitcoin, it's a great way for libertarians to learn why financial regulation exists. Because Bitcoin is basically like the stock market without any regulation, and every single scam you could imagine has happened because there isn't any regulation and it's fully decentralized. And you can't go to a bank and be like, hey, that person took money they shouldn't have taken. They're not allowed to take that, under this law. There's no laws. They took all your money. Sucks to be you. That person's a lot richer and you're screwed.
I think those are fighting words, and for the libertarians. And we're going to have to leave that as a pertinent question for when we do get. We've talked about getting some folks of different political ideologies on here to sort of duke it out on certain kinds of specific tech, issues and things like that. And so this would be a good one. But I do think that there are many of the libertarians that I know in my life, they glorify Bitcoin as laissez-faire, or at least they did back in the actual laissez-faire times of Bitcoin. It's certainly becoming more regulated now, so I'm not sure if I haven't had any conversations with libertarians since then about it, but Yeah, well, I think we ought to let the libertarians talk for themselves on that one, since they might have evolving thoughts on Bitcoin.
Indeed, and that's the key, is having the respectful conversation rather than just yelling at each other, which can be fun, but only briefly. But yeah, it's cryptocurrency people, which kind of aligns libertarians. There's more overlap than with other groups, but yeah, I know a number of libertarians that I agree with their basic idea. I agree with the premise. I would just disagree in some of the details and how we should achieve that goal. Um, and the Bitcoin stuff, there was a great article though that it's called "The Church of Cryptocurrency," and it was a few years ago before cryptocurrency really became mainstream. And again, what I want to talk about is the aspects of the system, because technically blockchain's just not that good. There's a lot of issues with it. And so it really is this belief that even though blockchain has been out there in some form for 10 plus years, someday it'll be like the internet and it'll change the whole world. And so far it's like, not really. I mean, it's made ransomware easier to monetize, but that's been its biggest impact to date. So anyway, we'll save that for another show, because I have lots to cover there.
Yeah, definitely. And I also want to give Alice Schmidt in our chat some credit for bringing up Captain Crunch when you were talking about DTMS.
Nice.
The whistle that came in the Captain Crunch cereal box could be played into a phone, and I think it gave you money, or it gave you free call time.
Depends on what tones you played. Yeah,
that's awesome. So yeah, this sounds great for us. all these exploits sound great for us.
I will say, so SolarWinds, this attack, SolarWinds is the company, Orion's the software that got attacked. From what I've seen, the name that they're going with is Sunburst, is the name of this attack. I think they missed an opportunity. I think it really should have been called Breaking Wind, but it's literally what they did, is they broke SolarWinds. So, and the connotation of how the stink we're going to be in from this, I think is far better, but whatever. It's called Sunburst. Missed opportunity.
I think it'll forever be known as Breaking Wind for us. So yeah, I guess on that note, let's wrap this up, since I have a tech book club meeting to get to at 1. We were meaning to get this recording done at a different time, but our schedules were a little tight today. Again, we just wanted to make sure that we got some content out to everybody, and we could have some time to interact with the audience and to try out the setup again and make sure that we're good and ready. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Elio, you got any parting words?
Yeah, since we're cutting this a little short, we'll save that for another session. But the biggest takeaway that we'll see, I honestly, I hate to say it, I don't think this is the attack that's going to change people's minds. It's going to get them on the right page. And you asked before, like, yes, the community is very creative. There's a lot of people for decades who've been like, hey, we need to do this, this, and this. And a lot of times that gets people like, it's fine. There's not that many attacks there. It's not costing us that much. It's starting to really cost us some incredible amounts of money. And the approach we have now of taking broken OSs that have plenty of bugs in them, which is, you got to patch all the time. Why? Because there's always bugs. There's always new things we're finding, new ways the things are broken and new ways in. And every time we fix them, we find more, and we also create regressions and create new bugs, or create old bugs, bring them back from the dead. So that approach clearly isn't working. If you've been watching the news, SolarWinds is the latest. It's gone from a hack every few years to every few months to at this point, almost every day. And there was a joke that Nick Espinosa does some really some nice little videos on LinkedIn. And someone was talking with him. They're like, man, Nick, you're going to have to start doing the breach of the hour and start covering which breaches happened in the last hour, which is kind of a joke, but also isn't. We're getting there very quickly, where he's going to have to stop doing all the breaches and just cover the big ones, because there's just so many. So clearly what we're doing is not working. We need to start looking at how do we engineer software to be intrinsically secure or correct by construction. So we'll have a whole nother show or several where we'll talk about what does that mean, and how do we actually fix the software so you don't have to patch it all the time. Like, it's actually secure. There are technologies and tools that allow us to make really, really solid software, but they're, quote, too expensive. I don't know. Where I'm sitting, looking at the news, looking up these massive attacks, it's costing us billions, if not trillions, to deal with this. I don't think it's approach. It's got to go away. We've got to get smarter about security, and start. We have to start from a solid foundation. We got to start building it in at the beginning rather than trying to layer it on top. You need a solid foundation. So that's all I want to close on.
Well, I think you're onto something. I think NPR News is probably going to have a breach section in there. You know, I could see this is NPR News. I'm Jack Schneider. The breach of the week, the breach of the hour is, you know, I could see it happening. And if not, hey man, you know, get the money and set up an hourly broadcast. I'm sure there's sysadmins out there who want to know.
Yeah, there's too many. Like you tune out because there's so many. So even in the industry, like none of us keep up to date on all the breaches anymore. You just can't.
Yeah. Well, everybody, that does it for today. I do want to thank everybody for joining us. We are going to be recording again on Saturday for Tech Topic, and we are also going to be recording every Monday and Wednesday. We will get the schedule out to you on Twitch for that. We have to wiggle some stuff around and make sure that we can commit to it for everybody, but that's the goal. So, again, as always, this podcast is sponsored by egx.org. We want to thank them for all their contributions. And I think that's it. So everybody have a good night or have a good day, and we will see you later. Bye.